Hey guys, this is Mac again, and this is part 2 of the lock and load video on the 300 Blackout upper. We've now completely assembled our 300 Blackout upper, and we've connected it here with our lower receiver. We've got some Arms Inc. 40L backup iron sights, which are a very high quality piece. And now it's time to choose some optics and to go out and fire the weapon. So when I was choosing an optic for this build, there were a few things that I was considering. First off, I think anybody who's considering 300 Blackout for a rifle should understand a few things. It's a load that's designed not to have superior accuracy out at long distance. It's primarily probably relegated to a close quarter combat type of round with a lot of knockdown power and low recoil. It's also designed to be shot suppressed. So when thinking about a rifle, I think that ideally you want a short barrel rifle with a suppressor to shoot this round optimally. That being said, it's also a great hunting round, so due to NFA laws, you might want to have a long gun that's longer than 16 inches to shoot this for hunting. But for optimum performance from the round, I think in an SBR with suppressor is the way to go. So if you're going to be considering shooting suppressed, you're going to have your supersonic loads, which are typically 110, 125, 150 grain 300 Blackout loads, and your subsonic loads, which are usually above 200 grain, so like 220s, 208, something in that general weight, and 30 caliber bullet. So that's going to give you two distinctly different zeros. Your subsonics are not going to have quite as much range, so in my mind I'm going to zero subsonics with a suppressor probably at a closer distance of like 50 yards. And then supersonics are going to have a little bit more range, so I'll typically probably zero that at about 100 yards. So those are things that I considered when choosing an optic. So I basically narrowed it down to a single red dot, something like a Vortex Razor or an aim point, versus a low power scope, 1 to 4 power variable scope. And the choice that I made was the Vortex Razor. Number one, because I already have one, and it's a really great optic. It's very dependable, and it has a 3 MOA dot, and most importantly, it's very light. So this is designed to be a very light build, weighs about 6.5 pounds, has a 10.5 inch barrel, and the Vortex Razor only weighs 3 ounces, so that doesn't really add a whole lot of weight. That was my primary deciding factor between a red dot and a scope, because a 1 to 4 power scope such as a Vortex Viper PST with scope mount weighs close to 20 ounces at least. So that's why I went with the red dot. Now as far as ammo, what I've been able to find so far is these 147 grain P&W range training ammo. It's ball ammo, FMJ, and right now it's probably the cheapest, most readily available ammo that you can find available online. In my mind, ideally by the end of the year, what I would like to be doing is reloading this by taking 223 brass and reforming it. And either myself or a very good friend of mine who's an expert reloader, together we could be churning out some rounds so that I can get out and shoot this rifle a lot. So let's get to our optic, let's get it installed, and then let's get out on the range. Now for my choice of optics, I've got two really high quality red dot optics here. These are two optics that I already have in my possession and have been using on other rifles. First, this is the Vortex Razor Red Dot. This has a 3 MOA red dot, and you've seen me shoot this optic on some other rifles. It's a really lightweight piece, which I think is the best quality of it. It's really accurate, it's easy to adjust, and once you set it, you can forget it. The next is an aim point micro. This is a T1 2 MOA dot. Everyone knows that aim points are super rugged and super reliable. So that really needs no introduction. Both of these optics are wearing American Defense Manufacturing quick detach mounts. Now I'm a big fan of ADM mounts. I also own some LaRue's, and I also think that Bobros are really good mounts too. But ADMs are a bit cheaper. They're very rugged and they lock up very easily with this lever on the side. So all of my red dots now are using ADM mounts, and I'm a big fan of those. So let's put each of these on here just so you can see what they look like. And when we go out and shoot the rifle, I'll take both of these with me and make a final determination of what I'm going to use on this build. Now when you're using quick detach mounts like this ADM, installation is very simple. The only tip that I would probably need to pass on to you is that I usually put this in the very farthest forward slot on the upper receiver. You don't ever want to bridge the gap or put your optic on the actual handguard because it's unstable. So you want to go on the actual upper receiver, and you want to go in the farthest forward slot, which is what I'm doing here. And then as you torque down the latch, you want to push forward on the mount so that you know that anytime you take this mount on and off that you're going to get a repeatable zero. Because these are QD mounts, they're meant to be taken off and on and be able to get back on your zero relatively easy. When you pay money for a really good mount, you want to make sure that it's going to do what it advertises. So returning to zero, I think, is one of the most important features of a mount. So that locks up really nicely, and we'll take a look at what this looks like in just a second. Now mounting the Aimpoint Micro will be much the same as the Vortex. I'm going to just put this in the farthest forward slot on my rail, just like this, and I'm going to push forward on the mount as I torque down the latch. There you can see there's a little bit different profile in an Aimpoint and the Vortex. However, they're both really lightweight. The Vortex, I think, with mount weighs about 6 ounces. The Aimpoint Micro weighs maybe a little bit more, like maybe 7 or 8 ounces with the mount. But they don't add a lot of weight to your rifle. They're also very dependable and return to zero anytime you take it on, take it off. Now here's just a quick front profile of both the Vortex Razor Red Dot, and you can see the profile here on the top of the upper receiver. It's very low profile, very easy to keep a wide field of view, and there's not a lot of metal casing around the actual glass on this sight. And also here's a front view of the Aimpoint Micro. A little bit more of the metal housing around the glass, but a wide open field of view. It's very easy to see your targets and what lies beyond them. Very light, very dependable, really, really great low profile red dot sights. Now, as I had briefly discussed previously, my choice of a single red dot for this build was simply because I see this as more of a close quarter combat rifle. It's a round that, while it can be very precise, probably is not meant to be used for longer range shooting. So I'm going to be primarily shooting this rifle, probably less than 300 yards. And going beyond that would be a rare occasion. So I feel comfortable doing that with a single red dot, especially one that has a small dot size such as a 2 or a 3 MOA dot like both of these optics that you've seen in this video. Also, we could talk a little bit more about the ballistics of the actual 300 Blackout round, which I think I'll probably do an additional video where I talk about reloading brass and making some rounds with the ballistics of this round. But I think, like I said before, you need to consider that if you're going to shoot this round suppressed, you're going to need 2 completely separate zeros, and you're going to need to keep your ballistics data for both trajectories, supersonic and subsonic. These are 2 rounds that have drastically different bullet weights, probably between like 125 or 150 grain bullets for supersonic versus 220 grain for subsonics. So my plan for this build is to take my single dot when I'm shooting this unsuppressed with supersonic bullet weights, having it zeroed for 100 yards, and having ballistics data readily available with me. I actually use my iPhone with a couple of really good programs when I go out and shoot. And then also having another separate zero at 50 yards when I shoot subsonic suppressed. And if you use that particular setup, then you're not going to have to change anything on the actual optic when you take your suppressor on and off. And you change all you really need to change is take the suppressor off and change your magazine, which has different loads in it, supersonic versus subsonic. Leaving that particular zero on the optic will give you those two separate zeros, 50 yards for subsonics and 100 yards for supersonics. I think that's going to work for me. I like to keep things as simple as possible. I've always been a big proponent of the 100 yard zero with red dots because it minimizes the amount of holdovers that you need to memorize in your head. So for me, this is going to make a lot of sense. Now, beyond 100 yards, the ballistics are going to be drastically different than they would be for 5.56 or 223 ammo. So I know for myself, when I shoot 5.56 or 223, that my holdover with a red dot at 200 yards is basically about half MOA to 1 MOA over the target, which for an 8-inch circle is just the top of the circle. At 300 yards on the torso, I'm aiming at the head. That's about a 4 MOA drop. And at 400 yards, it's about a 6 MOA drop. Now, I've shot that so many times that it's just ingrained in my head. I'm going to have to learn a completely new set of ballistic drops for a 300 blackout. But like I said, if I'm shooting this thing most of the time under 100 yards, you don't have to worry about that. Take a good 100 yard zero and everything is within about 2 inches of what you're shooting at. So for me, that works really well. Some other people might be proponents of different zeros, but this is what works for me. So that's going to do it for this episode of Lock and Load, which is part 2 of the 300 blackout build, and this was selecting our optic. Like I said, I essentially have not chosen yet. I know I'm going to use a red dot, but I'm either going to go with this Aimpoint Micro or the Vortex Razor, which I like them both, and right now I can't choose without going out and shooting the rifle. So thank you for joining me again. If you like this video, please click that like button for me, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. It's free, and you're always going to get weekly videos like this one to your inbox. So once again, this is Mac. This is the 300 blackout build. Be safe, and we'll see you next time.